All right, welcome back. I am so excited to welcome Sheila Holm to the show. Sheila has been just a great friend, has been involved in lots of things to try to help Georgia understand better what we are experiencing in these latest, 3 or 4 years. And so, Sheila, thank you so much for making time for us today.
It's so good to be with you because Georgia is the root of everything. They did
Isn't it?
all of it. The architect was King George III, which Georgia is named after. Congratulations.
So, for background, for those that this may be their first opportunity to hear, Sheila, gosh, you've got 21 books in publication, 18, 19 of which have been surrounding, and since you've been here in Georgia, you've done just a ton of research on the things. And as you say, you've heard the same thing that I heard some years ago from a mutual friend, and that is there is something about Georgia that makes us an epicenter, if you will, of many of these strange doings, I guess, for lack of a better term, as we sit here. So again, thank you so much. And gosh, I think we'll cover probably a pretty broad range of subjects. And I was lucky enough to begin, I'll call it waking up, back in 2020 after my daughter came back and gave me a couple of data points. And before I knew it, oh my goodness, I got dragged into realizing that so many things in the world are so different than what we have been told. And, it's kind of funny. You start talking about these things and you get challenged pretty quick, don't you? So where would you like to start? I know you've done a ton of work in a number of different areas, one of which has been the Georgia Guidestones and others. Where shall we start, Sheila?
Well, became the Georgia Guidestones gal. Had no idea that was going to happen. But a lot of people, 8 and 9 generations in Georgia, didn't know they existed until I started mentioning it in the books. And I put it in every book. I'm pretty sure it's almost in every book, if not every book. And I countered it with the faith monument because that's what the pilgrims gave us. 4 pillars on how to raise up a child in the way they should go so they do not depart from it, just on 4 pillars. And so that's kind of where the focus has been. But the gift about being in Georgia is that everything was done under the architect, King George III. When Oglethorpe said he was going to be bringing the debtors' prison people here, they decided, oh, no, we can make a lot more money on this land. So what we'll do is we'll push the native people off their land, out of their homes, which were wooden homes at the time. They weren't living in teepees. And we'll just get them all out of Georgia. And so there was a big case in Georgia where the Cherokee took on got all the way to the Supreme Court and won their case that they would not have to continue to be pushed out of their homes and off of their land. The problem is President Andrew Jackson said, well, then let Justice Marshall enforce it. And he knew that the Constitution said that, because people think that the Supreme Court, when they make a decision, they make law. And that's the problem. When Clarence Thomas gave his opinion on the Roe versus Wade case, knowing that Roe wasn't raped, Roe wasn't up for an abortion, Roe needed to get out of a prison term. And so her attorney helped her get off by confessing that she did to get Roe versus Wade case through the Supreme Court. But law is not made. And that's why Clarence Thomas actually gave us 6 more cases that they're going to redo and review and change the result on, because when they made an opinion, people took it that is law, and that's not true. So what happened with this man who was Cherokee, he got it all the way through. Since President Andrew Jackson would not enforce it, he was actually sent with the ministers and missionaries and pastors who fought for the truth of the fact that the Native Americans should not be pushed out of their homes and off of their land. And all of those people, and the Cherokee was forced because he didn't have one of their new kind of law licenses to represent other people. So they also put him in with all the other people fighting for it in hard labor camps in prison. Nobody ever heard from him again. And so that's the root of all of these things that have happened because of stealing the land from Israelites, because they were the Hebrew Israelites. And so Cherokee and Iroquois are part of the ninth son of Jacob, who became Israel, and that is Issachar. And they're brilliant. The Cherokee and the Iroquois provide wisdom and information still to this day to our military. And many have been raised on military bases and used as ghosts to go out and conquer and do kills for the military and come back with the confirmation. And so I've been honored to meet so many chiefs. And here's the gift. In the new book, An Eternal Plan Always Trumps a Human Plan, it's to counter the 45 points. And in that book, Father had me do a personal letter. And I thought it was going to be like 10 pages. Guys, it's almost 100 pages.
Oh, wow.
And so the introduction doesn't even start till page 107, which was kind of funny. It was going to be 99, but we have a friend who's 107, and it ended up starting the introduction on 107.
Isn't it funny how things work out that way?
Isn't it? And so in that personal letter, Father had me do a chronological. And in the chronological were things that I didn't even know. So I thought this personal letter was going to be a review of what Sheila knows and what I've been taught over the past 3 decades. And he had more new news for me because he had me do a chronological. And did you know that Jacob became Israel in 1906 BC? And those tribes have carried that truth all the way from 1906 BC, all the way to Christ at 0, and all the way to us. And we have a hard time keeping it 20 years because they've told us so many lies. So, and Moses, his time frame was 1400 BC. And we keep thinking that the Israelites, the sons of Jacob, Israel, were after Moses. And so we don't even understand the beginning of what the truth is. Exactly what you were telling us, Bill, is that we haven't understood the truth because they never told us the truth. And we haven't learned the truth because there was nothing to research. So all of my books, the whole book series For the Sake of America, was countering the lies, to bring us countering the false history. Because if you're living in false history, if you don't know where you came from or who you are, and you don't know whose you are, then how are you going to go forward? And that's what they've done, is put all of us in confusion. And who's the author of confusion? So those books were bringing us to the truth. And then an international attorney, Todd Callender, he's in the dedication acknowledgments in this new book. Todd Callender, I was working with him with a big team. He had a big email list, and we were working during the genocide. It wasn't just a pandemic in 2020, because 20 to them means recycle unto death. And so when we got together, we started talking daily. And for 9 months, we were hardly had a day that we didn't talk, all through every day, because everything was happening so quickly and people were so unaware of the truth. And the only way to save our families is to counter the truth. And it's hard to do when the mainstream media and everybody is lying.
That's right.
And all they do is kill truth seekers all the way back. It was a unique thing in an LT interview where they had, he brought up the fact when JFK, our president, was killed on November 22, 1963, when he was killed, nobody realized that Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World and told the world the truth, and C.S. Lewis, who wrote Screwtape Letters and other major books, told the Christians the truth. All 3 of those men were taken out on the same day. That's known in the satanic realm as a trifecta, when you kill 3, and it's on November 11/22. So that's a 3/3. You see what I mean?
I do.
So when they do this, they're awarded for all these kills.
Right.
And
three
so
is one of their things. When they repeat certain things 3 times, it maximizes the power of what they're trying to do, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. And on the 33 latitude or 33 longitude, they do all these things on these places. We don't live in that numbers process. So we're not always aware of how it is that they're, I mean, if we would have known that 20 was recycle unto death, and that they've had a pandemic every 20 year in every century. I've gone back 13 to 1300. All of this will be in the in the new books, I'm doing a 6 and 7 in the For the Sake of America series, because those pandemics happen every 100 years on purpose. And the one 100 years ago was not from Spain. It was not the flu. It was the H1N1 virus. And that's right on the CDC website and in their archives.
Right. They tested that just a few years ago to confirm that, didn't they?
Yes.
One of the things that I've seen is, and I find it hopeful, and it goes back to something you just mentioned, which is most people, we go through life or have gone through life and don't notice any of this stuff. It's like it's in the background because we've been trained to ignore it. But recently, and I would say probably the last 6 months or so, my sense is that people are now finally becoming more aware of the symbolism, of the inconsistencies of what's happened in the data about what's happened or not happened, and are beginning to ask harder questions. We've seen people that I know personally that have been very resistant to some of the things that that some of us have brought up in the past couple of years, and now all of a sudden are looking. And one of the funny things is the concept of these chemtrails, right? And the very fact that now I think there's 20 states that are or are considering legislation to prevent or control their use brings it into the realm of reality for many people. And all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, I thought that was just a myth. I thought it was a joke. These are real? What? And between that and so many other things since COVID, since the unfortunate adverse effects of COVID have emerged, people, I think, are beginning to really question stuff. And one of the things we've talked about in the past is this notion of the way that you referred to do things. They rely on many things that we don't notice, one of which is symbolism. And there's so many symbols in right here in Georgia, but all around the world, things that they mean something to these other folks. And yet, we've walked past them and don't even notice them often for most of our lives. Do you sense that people, at least some people, are getting more attuned to this? Are they being able to ask those questions and see things that they would have missed before?
Well, we're making a bigger push. The president's even asking, if you see any planes that are doing this or you recognize any of this, send me the call signs, send me the information, send me what airport they're flying into or out of. He wants the information. And by doing that, there was a wonderful website started, Geoengineering.com. No dots or anything, Geo, engineering.com. And so when you click on there, you go to your state and you start battling it for your state. That's why there's so many states now that are already processing it. The president has also said they're not going to allow this anymore. But you got to stop everybody that's involved in it and doing it. And there's a lot of money for somebody to go up and let all of that loose in our skies. But we're on it, Geoengineering.com.
Neat. You also, and we both have now, we've referred to them as they. And so, in the best way that you describe it, and I have probably my own way of talking about this, who is they? I mean, who is it that is behind, if we can characterize that, behind these deceptions? Ultimately, probably it's Satan, the devil, and whatever other 1,000 names he goes by. But who are the people pushing it in the world that we live in today, do you think?
Well, I've mentioned many times, and nobody really wanted to believe it until now they start seeing, because the evil's been hidden from us. So there's only two kingdoms, and I've shared this story many times. I was speaking at a beautiful resort, and the people were so happy to hear the information. And as soon as I came off stage, they were all asking questions as though they didn't understand what I was saying. And so I went in the restaurant, and it had a beautiful view of the lake. I remember sitting by a table and just, Father, I don't know what to do. I don't know. How do I make it so simple that people can understand the battle that we're in? And Father said, do you have a salt and pepper shaker? And I said, yes. And he said, well, put the salt in your right hand and the pepper in your left. And so I was ready. And thank goodness that morning I'd read the scriptures on may you be the salt of the earth and be of good flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was asking me, do you think you're of good flavor? And I said, well, I just read that scripture this morning and I really hope so. And he said, do you want to do what I want you to do? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, surrender unto me and be with me in all things. And I said, that's what I want to do. Sometimes I think I don't do that, but I want to do that. And he said, then you're with me. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, everything else is not. His plan is so simple. And we never learned to be so tight with him. So for years on all my interviews, I say your best bet to get through any storm is get tight with the Father. People have even made gifts for me that say my faith walk is to get tight with the Father. It's so powerful to see them understand how important this is. We were never taught that. We were never given that, because when Constantine changed everything, and this was confirmed to me when I got these 45 points. My first research went to the team, and I was between Chicago and Open the Heavens with Mary Crowley, and I was rushing from Sunday afternoon to Wednesday at noon to get back to Vegas in order to be there for a dinner that night, be ready for the dinner. And I'm on my way, and God said, you can't just add scripture to those 45 points. I said, well, they're that evil, and that's what I can do. And why is it not enough? And he said, you have to give my people a training manual. They have to see how desperate the world is to have us so aligned with them on every single point. We didn't know that we were going down the path to be taken into the world courts and they're done with us. And we didn't know there was a genocide plan because we didn't know about 20. So 2020, they have been waiting and waiting for 2020 to have it be a complete genocide. And we didn't know. And so I said, well, Father, what do you want me to do? And he said, well, why do you think this is happening? And I said, well, history shows that every 250 years, the culture disintegrates. And so that's kind of where we are. We're like in the 248th year at that time. This is in 23. And he said, is this the worst 250? And I said, well, probably not. You've focused a lot on the Faith Monument and the Pilgrims and what they brought, because they just got the Bible translated into English. They knew that Pope Gregory's Gregorian calendar messed everything up with the Hebrew calendar. And so they had wisdom and truth that we don't have. And so I'm thinking them bringing the truth. And by the Civil War, it was all destroyed. I'm thinking that's probably a worse 250 years. And he said, well, is it the worst? I'm still driving at this point, right? And I said, Father, yeah, I think that's a lot worse than where we are now, because we're not going to go into civil war. We've learned enough. We're speaking more with each other now. I think it's going to be better. This is 23 when we'd all learned a lot, right?
Yeah.
And he said, Sheila, did I not send my son with all truth? And in about 250 years, didn't Constantine put all of my people into Gentile worship? And don't my scriptures say, don't learn what the Gentiles do and don't do what they do? You may not think you're being evil, but you're of no good to me either. I said, yeah. I pulled over to the side of the road at this point because this was a deeper conversation than I thought I was going to have with him. And there were a lot of tears. And I don't know how long I was on the side of the road, but I was in still a big hurry to get to Vegas in 2.5 days. So I said, you know what, God, I have to repent, because I talk to people about the Gentile structure of the worship. And that's why those 3 eclipses in 7 years were so important. I think you've seen the map I gave to General Flynn and Clay Clark. Those 3 eclipses show in the 7 years, we've never had it like this. Every 24 to 30 years, there's an eclipse. And people go, well, these were full solar eclipse. And I said, yes, that happens about every 24 to 30 years. And the next one in another 23, 24, 25 years, right in there, is going to just dip into North Dakota, Montana, and that's it. So God did these and put his signature, Aleph, on America. That's how critical those 3 eclipses were, because what he was giving us with the third one, he crossed over the 2 tallest crosses in that pathway. In Texas, Kerrville, Texas cross, and then the one in Illinois, right at the border of Missouri and Illinois. And so when he did that, he went through the direct path went through 6 towns of Nineveh. And he said, you've got to include the Nineveh lesson in the PowerPoint that I was putting together. And what that lesson is, if you look in scripture, when Jonah was sent, he was sent to Nineveh. People didn't realize the king of Assyria took the 10 tribes in the north captive in 721 BC. Then in 712 BC, which I didn't know until he just had me do this message because it never gave a date. He went 9 years after they were taken captive and said, you tell the king that he's got 40 days to clean this up or I'm going to overthrow him. That's why Jonah went. And all this is in the book of Jonah. Then there's a small book, Micah, I think it is, and then Nahum. And I'm not a Bible scholar, but if you go to the end of Nahum, Nahum was sent 100 years later in 612 BC. And when Nahum was sent, it was over. There was no hope for the king. There was no way of turning it around. And Father was so upset because now everybody in Assyria was operating in Gentile worship, which is what we've done with Constantine's structure in our churches. So that was God's message to us. Don't do as these Gentiles do. Don't continue to do it, because the distinction between are you with him or are you with the other kingdom, which is how the world operates, which are these 45 points to draw all of us into their system. For example, the Gregorian calendar, every month of the year and every day of the week is based on a god or goddess of the other kingdom. And we're not to even focus on those. And yet we're repeating them every time I say, I'm going to meet you on August 3rd, Tuesday, whatever the day is, the day of the week, the month are both gods and goddesses. I had no idea it was that strong. And also it knocked it off the Roman calendar. So September, October, November, December was 7, 8, 9, 10, because the Roman calendar was 10 months. So when they made it a 12-month calendar to kind of align with the Hebrew calendar, what they did was they put the other 2 gods, Janus and Febru, they put them at the beginning, January and February. And so now you've got your year, 9, 10, 11, 12, ending with what means 7, 8, 9, 10. So talk about being in confusion all of the time. And that's why this new book was so critical to the Father, to counter the 45 points that are at the root of everything. When you look at these 45 points, it's how they've had us sliding down a slippery slope away from being with the Father or aligned with the Father from the very beginning of time. And they've done it in every nation. And now they did it specifically in America. And 44 was internationalized the Panama Canal, because we couldn't have land down in Panama with American people down in Panama. They had to have everybody in America, because it says the nation and the individual shall be taken into the world courts. That's 45. That's how far they had progressed on their plan. And they're so frustrated with us because no matter what they do to us, we still survive and we're blessed in many numbers. Just, can you imagine how frustrated they are? And they've never had to pay consequences for their major crimes because we believed them and we didn't take it to the Father about who these people are. Yeah. So that was a critical part of the letter now in this 45 points book.
You mentioned earlier the time of Constantine and the Operation Nicene, which changed and tailored much of what then became the belief system for folks that thought that they were, we're following Christianity, but it was a tailored version of things to take out certain things that we needed to know. You're talking about some of these dates and so forth, but there was plenty of information from what I gather now that was removed and hidden away such that we wouldn't understand many of the dynamics that I'm hoping people will understand better as we go forward. Yes?
Yes. In fact, we didn't know. The Holy Roman Empire, all of the emperors wore the Sol Invictus ring. All of this is in my Christmas book. I wasn't going to do a Christmas book. And then God woke me up a little after midnight when I was taking some widows at 5:30 in the morning to a big Bible study in a whole different part of Georgia. And he chose that moment to say, you've got to tell my people about Sol Invictus. I said, Father, I don't even know how to spell it. And so I turned the light back on, got up, wrote some notes trying to guess how to spell it. And I laid back down and said, okay, is that it? And he didn't say anything else. So I turned the light out. And he said, yeah, tell him about Surya. And I said, I don't know how to spell that either. And so I turned the light back on, made some notes about Surya, having no idea that Surya is a sun god in India, and Sol Invictus is the Roman god, sun god, and that's the rings that had his symbol on it on the emperor's finger. All the emperors wore that Sol Invictus ring. And what Constantine did, and all of this is in a few of my books, but in the Christmas book, he had me spell it out, that he did a declaration that on the venerable day of the sun, that's why we think we're worshiping the true Father on Sunday, but on the venerable day of the sun is when all shops shall be closed. So they took us from Sabbath, the seventh day rest with the Father, over to Sunday, worshiping their God, Lord, and Master of the universe with a capital letter on each name. And this is in my wake-up call book, when God said, I want you to Google the names for Baal. And I went, well, his name's Baal. And God said, no, Google his names for Baal. It's the first time he had me, the second time he had me Google was the background on Trump's family, the genealogy, because people didn't understand about the Hebrides revival. So there have been 2 times I was supposed to Google, and it was just kind of funny with God. I've never done it otherwise. And so I looked it up, and it said God with a capital G, Lord with a capital L, Master of the universe with a capital M. And so that's what they did in the Bible, but we've believed that those are the names of God, and made fun of and destroyed the lives of many Native Americans because they sang to Yahweh and Yehovah, and their songs were that. And we didn't know that those are major names for the Father. He has many names, and those names are in the Wake Up Call book, and they start on page 8 in the Always Speak Life book. And then I thought I was done, and then boom, I had to do Christmas book. So
the other thing that, and we don't have to go into the details, but you kind of alluded to it. They took dates for various days of remembrance or days of celebration, and used what were pagan dates, and in some cases made us believe that they were in fact proper dates for commemorating the Lord, or other Christian key dates. And so, they've done all these things to deceive, to misguide, to follow all the things that we've been told forever. Oh, well, this is the way that Satan the devil works. He deceives. He finds ways to push you, get you moving in the wrong direction. And hopefully now people are beginning to be open to the fact that, hey, you have to question things. You can't just take things on face value. You mentioned earlier in our pre-game discussion, Laura Logan and some of the work that she's been doing. And she recently interviewed Mike Smith, who is the gentleman that put together the movie Out of Shadows, and most recently has produced the movie Into the Light. One of the things he talks about is that even in Hollywood, there were dynamics in some cases playing out where we would see certain things in movies that turned out to be in some ways kind of important, sort of foreshadowing. And in the bad guys' realm, if you will, in their belief system, if they in some manner tell us what they're going to do or show us what they're going to do, it puts the onus on us to figure out what we're being shown and push back against it and simply say, no, we're not going to comply with that. And people are not used to that concept. They never knew that they had to push back on these things. And yet it doesn't matter in some ways. It doesn't matter what we believe. What matters when they do these things is what they believe. Their belief is what governs their decisions and methodologies. That's a tough one for many people to grasp too, because they're constantly thinking, well, gosh, what do I need to be watching out for? And it is an interesting question. What are the things we need to watch for, as we go forward? Or is there a different way that we can structure our thinking and lives that keeps us on a better road. What do you think?
There's two things at work here. One is the Constantine putting us on all Gentile pagan worship and feasts and festivals. They don't call it feasts and festivals, but that's what it is. The feasts and festivals of the Lord are in Leviticus 23. And the feasts and festivals of the Lord are held on Hebrew dates. So, for example, when these are examples that are in the new book, in the personal letter. He had me put all this stuff in the personal letter, including Kofefe. We got that one in the personal letter too. And so we can tease the people about that today if you'd like to share that. But what happened is Constantine was doing this. And now the Knights of Pythias, the top secret society, remember when President Kennedy said everything secret is repugnant? That top secret society has been over entertainment, politics, athletes. It's been over everything. And the first territorial governors in America were all Knights of Pythias high nobles. The entertainers, same way. The entertaining Booth family, it was John Wilkes Booth that took out Kennedy, or took out Lincoln, and Lincoln was the one that supposedly gave them land grants for all their castles in the United States. I mean, it's just because all of that started in 1864. Pike did the bottom societies and Justice Rathbone did the tops. You go from Masonic or Skull and Bones or any fraternal organization, Odd Fellows, any of the ones that have say they're for charity beneficiaries for our communities. Those organizations, you can climb all the way through the orders of knighthood, and there's many, all the way to the top one, which is Knights of Pythias. But you're always linked to where you came from. So if you wear a Knights of Pythias pin, it's got Mason symbol on the bottom, or a Bones and Skull and Bones on the bottom, or whatever it is. So those societies put all this in motion. And that's how they structured all of our communities. All of this is in the new book. A lot of it's in the FBI chapter, which is right in the middle of the book, around 300. And so when you look at how they structured all of this stuff, they've gone so far with the lies. So the Knights of Pythias have been in charge of the plan. And there are guys that at that level, you can only be involved if you're at that high noble level. And that's why Kennedy said specifically, while I'm still in this high noble office, and he said that 7 days before they took him out, that I'm going to be telling you, what's really going on. Because Eisenhower had told him the whole thing, the whole plan, how they're doing it, who's doing it, etc. And so, because our guys have tried to counter this 6-7 times since the Civil War, but it's hard to counter it when those who are trying to bring the truth are taken out. Or many amazing podcasters. A good friend of our friend, first name Bill, and taken out in his front yard. And he was providing all this information.
Yep, Mr. Cooper.
Yeah.
Yep, God bless him.
And his information still coming out, and everything he warned us about has come to pass. Everything he warned us about. Now, if we would have understood those warnings and understood what to do, we could have countered and saved some lives of our family members. But this is what they have done. They've absolutely encased and taken control of absolutely everything. And that's why when people say, I just want President Trump to finish fixing it, why didn't he fix it in the first term? Why do we have to wait till he came back? And why did it have to get so bad? It's not for guys in politics. They flipped the switch on us and made the federal the decision maker to tell us what we could and couldn't do and tell us what they were going to do or not do. They flipped the switch on us. It's we the people in order to form a more perfect union. This is a government. Republic is a government of, by, and for the people. So what they did, and again, this is in the FBI chapter, it's a man named Bonaparte. Go figure, from the Napoleon Bonaparte family. His brother Joseph's grandson, Napoleon's great-grandson, came to America, became the U.S. Secretary of the Navy. All of this is in the FBI chapter. And then he became the Attorney General. He set up all the special agents in America. But here's the key nobody realized. He started just this little organization called National Municipality League. And when he started that, this is what they did. They set up the structure of every village, town, city, county, and state across America. And every one of those little government structures is under what? A corporation structure. We had no idea. That's why a little village has a board of trustees. What for? Because they're another corporation. And so the corporations are in control of every single level of our government. Now, here's what else they did. There's a specific merit-based system that he established that's still in effect. And they position all of the political leaders over the village, town. So here's a corporation over your local government. And you think you're voting for everybody, but they really only let you vote for 4. So the rest are already positioned. And that's why we've had rigged elections since way back in the 1800s. So none of this is new of what they're doing to us now. We just didn't know. So they got mad in he started it in 1894, and in 1986, they changed it to National Civic League. And all that did was take it from municipality as a noun that they were going to control, and to civic, which is a verb. And so there you go. Now all they do is just change from one to the other, but it didn't change anything as far as the structure. And so they not only have the merit-based system to position those political people in that, and that's why Flynn made it very clear. We have to make a local impact to impact national. Because if we don't clean up who's representing us in the little villages and towns and cities, if we, the people, don't get our control back there, you won't be able to continue the control federal, because they'll keep putting their people in those positions. And you won't even know, because you believe they have great character. You believe they have great integrity. So here's what Father had me do, and it'd be a fun little study. Go back and look at a scripture called Titus 1. Didn't know about this scripture until God brought it to my attention. And in Titus 1, it's to put elders who cannot be deceived, elders who cannot be taken over by these grifters that come in and tell you how things are supposed to be run here and how the budgets are supposed to go. You get these elders in each of these areas, and it explains it in Titus 1, because that's the only way you're going to be able to pass the truth on to the generations. And if you think about it, the Native Americans passing it on for 4,000 years, I think we can try for at least 400.
Yeah, hopefully.
So that's a goal.
Isn't it fascinating that you bring up this concept of corporations being a governing force all the way down to local level? One of the most concerning things in Georgia is we discovered that back in 2014, I believe, or just thereafter, the Georgia Republican Party had actually incorporated itself. And that's not provided for in Georgia law. Georgia law says that a party has to act under something called Title 21 laws. That does not have any effect on corporations. Corporations act under Title 14 laws. So for the last 4 years, people have been questioning, why do we have this? Why do we have this odd structure with this corporation sitting over a party? And to your point, you look at counties, you look at cities, and they're all structured that way. They all have these corporations. And so even though the law says, well, the city has to do things this way, or the county has to do things this way, the corporation, because they're structured that way, has certain capability that a standard structure would not have. They don't have to do certain things. In the case of the Georgia Republican Party, the GOP, you can ask them to do certain things, but they don't even follow their own rules. Why? Because they're a corporation. They're not governed by their rules technically. At least it doesn't appear to be, because they don't follow them. So there's
another step. There's another step beyond this. Do you know why they're not following the constitutions?
Go right ahead.
Did you know the majority of states in America never ratified their constitution? So when they say they're taking an oath to their constitution, they're not, because there isn't a ratified constitution you can hold them to. They did that on purpose. And in addition to saying that it's not ratified and they don't have to take the oaths, number 13 of the 45 points, all of this is in the new book. Number 13 of the 45 points is avoid all loyalty oaths. And that's why they set it up this way. And so we're working diligently to get more than half of the states, at least, with a ratified constitution before the next election.
So when you say ratified their own state constitution?
It's a whole structure of how many people have to vote for it, because the people in the state, it has to be ratified by the majority of people in the state. And South Carolina, where they brought the New World Order. So we've had the World Order. You know why we're funding everything globally? Is because we're the World Order. Didn't even know. That's why people, death to America is because we're destroying the other nations and getting people in wars because we're funding both sides of. In Nicaragua, it was really crazy. I met a man who's a cousin, and he said that the Sandinistas and the Contras, did you know they were the same family? Just cousins of the same family, two limbs of the tree. And the government was paying both sides to kill each other off in that drug war down in. This is the stuff that happens. And we've been behind all of this because we've been the world order since 1871. And that's why all of this funding to all these other places. Go blow them up, and then we rebuild. Look what happened in Iraq. Yeah. We blew it up in 3 nights, and then what? They got a brand new airport, brand new buildings, brand new.
Wasn't it fascinating that we've spent so much trying to supposedly help protect Ukraine, yet one of the first things that happens is when they looks like we're going to finally have peace, all of a sudden now comes, now we need to talk about the money to rebuild. Oh my goodness. Hundreds of billions of dollars.
Can you bring up a page? Can you share a page on from the PDF? I can show you why we have problems with Ukraine.
Sure. When you say PDF, which
of the book, the PDF of the book, I think is page 362, where I show all the symbolism of the Ukraine. I show the map of Ukraine, I think, on 362, and the very next page I show the symbolism. Because we got to warn people, just like you're waving that Israel flag, I stand with Israel, and you don't know what the flag means, and then you're doing the same thing with the Ukraine flag. But in the PDF, I think it's page 362.
Yeah.
Well, it's a major symbolization of exactly what we're dealing with. So what is Ukraine? So I give you a map, and what you're going to notice on the left side is in yellow. That exact map that's in yellow and a little bit of the green, where they speak a different language or a mixed language with Russian in the green, but that whole yellow speaks a completely different language, which is the original Ukraine. That's the original country known as the ancient land of Khazaria. So that's ancient Khazaria is the yellow, a little bit of the green, and then they've pushed into Russia, and you'll see all the blue areas. That's why they speak Russian. Then if you just scroll down a little bit to the top of the next page, the top of the next page shows the symbolism. So the symbol that you're showing on that Ukrainian flag, it's not just blue and gold. It has a symbol on it. And that symbol of Ukraine is identical to the one I put in the middle. You'll see is a symbol that the Luciferians use to summon up Lucifer in their satanic rituals.
That's the one that looks like a trident. Is that right?
Yes. And then on the right side, what you're going to see on the right side is a medal they give to people who do whatever you're supposed to do in Khazaria. And they're still giving those out. And that's their medal, Khazarian medal. So, and then if you scroll down into 400s, you're going to see, I put the pictures in of that meeting. Now, this is what was so critical when the president was talking with Zelensky in the Oval Office, I believe, with J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance didn't say anything for 40 minutes. And then he reached a point where he just had to say something. And that's when Zelensky got upset.
This is during the big blow up in the Oval Office. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Now, the reason why that happened, and it was so critical, it was happening as I was finalizing the book. So I immediately said, stop the editing I'm adding. And so I put the pictures in of that event. Now, why was that so critical? We have paid billions and billions and billions of dollars through Ukraine that haven't done anything for any people in Ukraine, because all of it's run by the oligarchs that held the 4 sons in good positions. That was not just Hunter. It was not just Pelosi's son. It was not just Romney's son. It was also John Kerry's stepson, Hines.
Yep.
And so all 4 of those were getting huge salaries to do what they were told to do, but you're passing it on to the next generation. We haven't understood that what we're funding is for their families in these other countries. We're not helping the people in the countries. We're operating with people who are controlling the budgets of all of these nations and have controlled them the entire time. And that's how they came in and controlled us, by bringing the New World Order here in 1871. And we had no idea how enslaved we were to be funding all of these things. So as you scroll down and you see those pictures, so what happened when J.D. Vance asked those specific questions of Zelensky? He put him on the spot as to their budget. Why? Because of what they got him to reveal, we now finally in America had the right to go in and audit the money flow into Ukraine. We've never had that opportunity before, as far as I know. There's never been an opening. And that opening happened because of that conversation. So I stopped all the editing and everything and inserted that. But it's a little bit further down. It's over 400. So as you scroll through the book, you'll see the pictures of Zelensky on one page. And then, are you doing that right now? Because there's a special quote in there, a Sun Tzu quote about, there's a Sun Tzu quote about Zelensky. And it's so beautiful. And it fit right in. So let's see if I can find it. Zelensky was so upset. They had him at such a temper. And then when he left, remember, he said he would resign his position if they would let him be, if they would let Ukraine be in NATO. They're fighting strongly to get in NATO. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so powerful. So it's on page 406. So if you guys turn to 406, you're going to see after 40 minutes, VP Vance inserts the truth. And then NATO funds wars in Europe. NATO's symbol is on the right. Americans are funding 70% of all those wars over in Europe where they're blowing each other up, and then we rebuild for them. Mm-hmm. So everything's getting rebuilt, but nothing's getting rebuilt in America. But here's the Sun Tzu quote at the bottom, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. It's that an evil man will burn his own nation to the ground it is so small, to rule over the ashes. An evil man, and that's what Zelensky's doing. He will burn down his own nation in order to rule over the ashes. It's not about the people. And so that's what the emphasis is in the 45 points. They don't care about any of us. They don't care what they've done to any of us. They don't care what they're doing, what we're supposedly doing to all these other nations, because we haven't helped a nation. That's what God showed me. I mean, travel the world on his dime for 3 years. I was only home long enough to do laundry and repack and go where he wanted me to go next. And he handled all of it. That's in my Faith Walk book, about 7 months of that trip. Just to show you dovetails where he did this in this year so that next year I'd have a return flight to go here. You know what I mean? He has it all planned out. I just had to surrender. Yeah. And so he had to show me how all these people in these other nations have nothing, and yet they have everything. And that was the weirdest thing to me. And then he used it against me because I said, could you please send someone to America to show the people in America how to do this same thing? Because we really need to be doing this. So what did God do when I got to Georgia? I said, I don't know why I'm stuck here. Did I do something to anger you or upset you? And he said, no. He said, you asked for this assignment. And I said, I never, ever mentioned the name Georgia. I don't know anything about Georgia. I'm here and I don't know what these people know. And he said, they cried out for me to send someone. So I sent you. And then the more people I met, they go, I never knew that. I never knew that. Now, these are people who've lived here their whole lives. They have generations of people who've lived here, and they never knew what God was showing me.
No.
So it started to hit. It took me about 15 months or 18 months. I was here without a car. My car was still in California because I just came for 3 weeks. And in finding out all of these things, it was so astounding to me to find out what God was showing me so I could tell the people, because the people who live here just go to their job every day and do these things, and they don't know the other layers of what's been done to us.
Mm-hmm.
So in explaining that and revealing that, that's why these books, and I couldn't do them fast enough. I mean, all of this happened in 7 years, all 18 books. And then I didn't do a book for 4 years, 20, 21, 22, 23. This one was going to come out in 24. And then all this was hitting about the canal. The president was revealing all my research about the canal. In fact, when I told you on my way to Vegas, when I got to Las Vegas, that dinner didn't happen Wednesday night. They moved it to Thursday. And I'm like, you know what, God, I could have driven a lot slower. And yet, here I am. So what do you want me to do? And he said, I want you to turn on the TV. And I said, why? It was August 23 of 23. Why do I remember it so well? It's the night that President Trump did the first interview ever with Tucker on his new network. And they had already recorded it, but it was released that night when they did the debate. So there's a Republican presidential debate, but the president's on with Tucker. So in that interview, right in the middle, and I put the transcript in the new book, right in the middle, the president said, it was back in 1903. And Tucker's like, 1903, this is my first interview. You're the president. You wanted to be current, right? The hot stuff happening today. The president's talking about 1903. And no matter how much Tucker kept trying to pull him back into the current year, president kept going back to 1903. He quoted all the research I'd given the team so far. But I said, I just don't know who's in control of it. Because if it's still ours, then I'm going to find out what happened with the land. But I thought he could help me with a real estate transaction because I couldn't find a real estate transaction, couldn't find the treaties, couldn't find anything. And then the president said at the end, after he quoted all my research and corrected a couple of items, because that's how he lets me know I've got better numbers than you do, Sheila, or I got, but I was hearing my research direct from him. And then all of a sudden at the 5-minute mark, I think it was from 22 to 27 minutes right in there. It's all in the new book. And at the end of that, he goes, you know what? You're probably wondering who has control of it. Well, it's China, but you guys know I'm a good friend of Xi, so I'm just going to make a phone call and I'll get the control back. And so, boom, there I go. So I had the excitement and inspiration. If he really gets it and he knows and he's in real estate and he can't find the land, then I got into deep prayer and I said, God, you want me to write this whole thing backwards? And this is point 44 and I got another 43 to go. And so I need some help here. And just very quietly, it was a Sunday afternoon, God said, U.S. State Department statement, Second Panama Canal Treaty. When I put it in the computer, boom, there it was. One little phrase. Per the second treaty, per the U.S. State Department statement on the second treaty, the Panama Canal land zone, the 4,000 plus acres we bought in 1903, right? Mm-hmm. Will cease to exist on 1 October 1979. European format. God's land doesn't cease to exist. So I immediately got a hold of the team and they said, put it as tight as you can on a text. That was a Sunday afternoon. They said, we'll get it to the president in the morning. Tell him about the books he's already worked on, because he's helped in the book series. He's given land back to the Native Americans. He's given ranches that belong to Ted Turner back to the Native American tribes completely. It's just been amazing what he has accomplished. And he wrote all of it himself and then got it passed and then signed it. I mean, he's really worked diligently on what we need to resolve in order for this land to heal. Wow. And so to tell him this was so exciting. And then he just started giving me facts and more pictures. So in the 43 chapter on the canal, you'll see why it's now the United States of America Canal and why the Gulf is now Gulf of America. Our state constitutions protected those mineral rights. So that land is protected by state constitutions in America. So there's so many good things, that are getting resolved.
That's a great lead in for, I know people as they listen are saying, wow, how there's a lot we're covering. We're going through all kinds of detail. How do I get my arms around this so that I can understand better? And one of the best ways is to refer to exactly what you're pointing to as the books that you've put together. Here is your website, www.hisbest.org. You got some great things. Just if folks want to go peruse it, there's a beautiful video. At the very beginning, it gives some background on you and some of the things that you put together. It shows many of the books, shows many of the dynamics that have played out in the past decades. You list interviews, but also folks can see the books that are available. And this is the latest one, yes, the Eternal Plan. And many of the things you've been talking about are in this one. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the brand new one on the countering the 45 points. Yep. 2.5 years of research, 500 pages. God said, I know it could have been 3,000 because there's 5 things that are not in it. I was so frustrated when I found out the editors had made some changes, but God said, I'm the one who stopped it at 500. It could have been 3,000 if you would have kept going.
There's also this series, For the Sake of America, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And those are also available through your website. No, they're available through other booksellers as well, I assume. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, local bookstores. 6 and 7 are going to be coming out, and second edition on Nation Restoration is coming out. Those are the next 3 that are in process.
And those are also available through the website, and you can find them. And then, of course, there's events. You appear at a number of events, both across the country, here in Georgia and elsewhere. And I've been lucky enough to attend a couple of those and hear you speak, and always fascinating, always instructive and entertaining. It's fun to learn this stuff because you sense, at least I do, I sense truth in a number of the things that you cover so quickly because, it's kind of like, wow, the parts finally fit. Isn't that interesting? So highly recommend folks go to the website, learn more about what's going on, where events may be coming up, and take a look at the books and find which ones may be most appropriate for where they want to learn the most next. What else is on here that I haven't spotted, Sheila?
On this book or on
on the website itself?
Well, if you go to the interview page and you scroll all the way down, all the interviews that we're putting out are featured on the interview page, and then we put them in the scroll, and that's on the home page and the interview page. But if you go to the interview page and you scroll down, everybody's been wanting that little 4.5 minute Hebrew one that explains fifth dimension communication. And it uses 6 as a tent peg. And it's also beast and man, but 6 is also Ruach HaKodesh, which was for the eclipses. So that little 4.5 minute Hebrew, we put it down in the podcast section because I'm not doing podcasts until I get these new books out. And so I don't know when I'm going to do it. Everybody wants me to do it, but guys, it's so powerful to have conversations with, like here we are with William, and the things that he brings to my attention to share with you are things that you've let him know that you're concerned about or want information on. And to me, that's so much more powerful than me trying to create a program and doing a podcast myself. And so there's not been a plan for that, but they insisted you've got to have it on your website. So in that little podcast section, way at the bottom of the interview page, you'll see, and it says right on there, I think, the Hebrew video everybody wanted a copy of, it's right here.
That's great. That's great. Well, we're, again, we're so honored to have you with us, and I cannot wait till the next time because we've covered so much, and we're really just scratching the surface, aren't we? I mean, there's just so much that people need to come up to speed on. So, any thoughts before we close?
If you want to take on the 45 points, because the whole thing is to train up so the future generations don't let this evil plan come back front center and take over our lives again. Because right now we're encased still in their plan against us. We have to fight our way through this. and train the next generations on how to do that. So I'm available if you want to go into some of these points. 1 and 2 are really kind of fun because we didn't win the Revolutionary War, World War I, or World War II. In fact, World War II, we gave them $15 million to not do a nuclear bomb, and then we brought them here and paid their scientists and built the bomb here, and our guys lowered the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So we could just take on those 2 points one time, because people are just enthralled as to, what do you mean we didn't win World War II? And Jason Q is a wonderful researcher, way beyond me. He has his Substack right behind him if you ever see interviews of him. And he's the one that read the armistice that was done in December of 1943, 2 years before my dad was able to leave the Orient after fighting from New Guinea with the cannibals all the way through to the islands around Japan and on up into the Philippines before he was released December of 45. And if it was over December of 43, that's before Normandy, because that was June of 44. So if we knew the truth, if we could put our hands around the fact that nothing, if we could just start with nothing we have heard has been the truth for us to depend upon and live upon, and just start researching ourselves, because we're the only ones that can bring this through. And the only way through the storm is going to be with the Father's guidance, because he knows the end from the beginning. And he certainly has shown me things that I never would have found on my own. Yeah. Never.
And nobody else has been able to predict how this thing was going to go. So sounds like great advice. I we'll pick this up in our next segment, and I can't wait to do that along with you. So thank you so much for being with us. And God bless in the meantime. Thank you so much.
And bless you until.
Thanks.